Hi, team. Hi, Kelly. Hi, Jacqueline. We're gonna wait just a couple more minutes. We expected quite a few more friends, so hold tight. Hi all. We're going to do a quick round of introductions and then go ahead and get started. If you are joining in the room, make sure you push the big button and your microphone will turn green so that folks can hear you. And then if you are online, please unmute yourself so we can hear you also. The board strategic plan was sent out last week as well as attached to the calendar invite. Actually, I will attach it to the calendar invite. And if you have anything for the good of the order before we get started. Awesome. And I will also share my screen with the board strategic plan. All right. So some quick updates on this. What is happening? Okay. I don't know. We're going to try that again. Jeremy, any idea why this is happening?
Can you try closing it and opening it again? If that doesn't work, you can email it to me and I'll open it on my end.
Okay. Jeremy's a genius. All right. So, the last time that we had a conversation, we walked through the board strategic plan and figured out kind of like next steps on it. And I think we have another friend. Nope. No. Okay. And so the kind of next steps that we took with this was really laying it out into a Word document and then trying to get your feedback on this document before we go to the board for approval at your next meeting. To give you a layout, we did a little bit of like history of like what is homelessness in Maricopa County. So pulling in both that the system flow dashboard and the homelessness trends report, as well as the point in time count. And then we also pulled in what is the continuum of care. So if this document were to be read by somebody who is not in this work every single day, they would still have kind of a background of the work. And then the next page really goes into the plan overview. So looking at, I pulled in your mission, vision, and values from your charter. So this really talked about how you all want to be anti-racist, free of discrimination, and all people have a safe place to call home. And then as well as your mission, and then you have those top 6 values. And then we did a brief description on your strategic framework. So this really talked about how you're rooting your strategic plan in data, but also you're focused on 4 main things: your regulatory roles and oversight, system performance measure improvement, monitoring, evaluation, and technical assistance, and then your communication strategy and plan. Any questions or thoughts on that before we move forward? All right, hearing none, I'm going to keep going. Stop me at any time, friends. So then we go through and identify each activity, who is the lead, and the timeline for each of these different sections. So really want to spend the majority of our time talking through each of these, seeing if you all have feedback or changes to any of this before we take it to the board for approval. So going to pause and let you look through this regulatory roles, oversight, and approvals and see if you all have any changes to that.
Katie, this is Jackie. I think it looks good to me.
Thanks, Jackie.
I have one question. This is Lisa. Under best practices, policies, and procedures, can you refresh under that first bullet what that means? Review the community adopted best practices and offer recommendations. What does that mean?
Absolutely. Thanks, Lisa. The community adopted best practices is a document that used to be in our charter. We separated it out, same with the ESG and CoC standards for administering assistance. So that is like a formal document, and the committee is in the process of reviewing that document right now and are going to bring forward recommendations, I believe, in July. I'm looking at Nikki. Your community adopted best practices work group is meeting right now to bring back.
We're meeting 3. Formal again. Yes, we have our first scheduled meeting tomorrow, and we'll be meeting 3 times this month. And hopefully by July, we should have some information to feedback to the board.
So give me an example, adopted best practices for housing. Is that the kind of thing you look at, or best practices for intake, or?
Yeah, so the document actually walks through pretty much every single intervention in our system. So permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing, the best way for outreach, emergency shelter. And it really talks about like, how should staff be trained, how to interact with clients. I believe it's like a 15 to 20 page document.
11 pages.
Okay.
Thank you. That sounds great.
And Lisa, I'm happy to provide that to the one that has been adopted and send it over to you.
I'd love to see that. Yeah, we're doing some strategic planning here at CAS, and I think that would be very helpful. Thanks.
I can send it to you right now, Lisa.
Thank you very much.
Katie, this is Rob. I don't have any feedback. I think everything looks good on the document.
Any other feedback on this section before we move forward? All right, I'm moving then. So this next section is looking at your system performance measures. I am going to find a better way to visualize your system performance measures. This is pulled directly from your homelessness trends report, but doesn't really give like the full picture. And so we'll be incorporating each of these, but this does define a description of what it is and what it means. And then we will be looking at what is it for your 2021 system performance measure submission, and what is your goal, as well as what is your current number. So we'll be making this visual a little bit more tangible and understandable. But then kind of the biggest thing that we looked at that was different from your Excel sheet is we incorporated all of the system performance measures into one spreadsheet sorted by short and long term, and then added the far left column for what system performance measure it applies to. In looking through your system performance measure and all the different ones that you had across the 6 different, there was a lot of things that overlapped across system performance measures. And we found that instead of duplicating that over in every single section, it was more tangible and understandable to have it in one section and see which different performance measure it applied to. And then the last thing you'll see is this entire list is sorted by timeline. So with the most urgent ones coming up first. And if you have any feedback on that, we're definitely open to that as well. So I will pause on this first page. Hopefully folks can see that. I will also open up the floor if you have any additional ones that are not on here that you feel like definitely need to be on here. I'm happy to take that feedback as well from you all.
This is Liz. I think it's great. Just such a good job. Thank you so much. Like absolutely fantastic. My only thought is if while we're working and attending board meetings monthly, if a new idea comes up, would we have the capacity to add something to it outside of like our quarterly strategic planning review? What do you think?
I'm definitely open to hearing what people think about that. I think yeah, like if things come up, this should be kind of a living, breathing document that needs to be adopted as, say, next week we enter into a data sharing agreement with Access, which we're thinking about doing, then we need to be able to add to that and kind of respond as needed.
Okay. I like that because it's things are kind of ever changing, and it really seems to be kind of where we're really assigning things to our other committees. And so it can just be used as like a framework for continuing that. And so my only other thought is we don't have the lived experience subcommittee really too involved in much of it. And so I will kind of go back and see if there's any other places I would like to recommend that we have them as a lead and then communicate that over to you. Okay, great. Great job. Thank you.
Other feedback on this page, also happy to move to the next. We have quite a laundry list that fall into the system performance measures. This is where the bulk of your work kind of resides.
Katie, I have an organizational question.
Go ahead.
For your timelines in the far right-hand column, how will individuals be reminded that these timelines are coming up? Will it be a regular occurrence at committee meetings or at board meetings?
The board has decided to revisit this on a quarterly basis, but this would be kind of like a living, breathing document that all committees should be referring back to. So, for example, this if I just pull this first one, like deep dive data to ensure folks are not being pulled back into the by name list, like that would become an agenda item for the data subcommittee as well as the committee and the board, outside of just, so this should be kind of like the focus where we're pulling agenda items to be able to move the work forward.
Thank you.
Any feedback or thoughts on the long-term system performance measure section?
I think you've done a fantastic job. Was Jackie, by the way.
Thanks, Jackie.
This is Letitia. This is very comprehensive. Everything that we mentioned in our sessions is here. This looks great.
I agree. This is Lisa. Question, just to refresh my memory, what is Pathways Home?
Pathways Home is the regional action plan for local and tribal governments. So there's a lot of things in here that local and tribal governments may be responsible for that the CoC either has their hands in but isn't necessarily responsible for. So it's kind of the 5-year plan for local and tribal governments. So you'll see some of the things in here really, it falls more on regional council and the regional homelessness coordination team rather than on the CoC to make those things happen. But didn't want you all to lose sight of that work either. So you all have had a series of updates on that work. You'll have another update on that in July as to what has been accomplished up to this point. We've been updating regional council on a quarterly basis with all of that work. but know that kind of you work hand in hand. It's not necessarily mutually exclusive, but also at the same time, you aren't responsible for a lot of the work that's in that plan.
Thank you. That's awesome, really, to be able to have that all, in one place so we can have the big picture. Thank you. Great job.
Yeah, it looks great. Thank you.
I agree. Thanks, Katie.
So the hope in this timeline is it would be accomplished by that timeline. So by no means can we, like, for example, successfully implement the learning and action and policy and partnership data warehouse project. That meeting happens 2 to 4 times a month. There's multiple work groups involved with that, with the hope that it would be done by March 2024. So know that just because these have like a longer term deadline does not mean we need to pause action on them now.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Any other feedback on your system performance measures, short and long term, before I move on to monitoring, evaluation, and technical assistance? All right, I'm hearing crickets and you all might be out of this meeting in 30 minutes. So we're moving through this so fast. So the monitoring, evaluation, and technical assistance, a lot of this work really does fall on MAG staff to do. We have a full-time monitoring person who was just hired a few months ago, but really broke these down into the type of monitoring, evaluation, and technical assistance. So policies versus monitoring, technical assistance, and then training. Happy to hear any feedback or things that you all hear. And this really is kind of a year round. We want this to be ongoing all the time. We're consistently improving our programs.
This is Liz, so I'll jump in on that one. I think for the review NOFO scorecard and provide feedback and changes for improvement, I wonder if we can just add anything around like review of preliminary scores, even like mock scores. So we're showcasing that we're not just doing it when we're actually going through NOFO, you know what I mean? But instead we're kind of pre-gaming a little bit with providers, helping to, do you think that's realistic with the hiring of that position?
I would say that it is really difficult to review mock scores across all agencies, but reviewing after the fact, what could you improve on, is something that we do want to implement. Is how did you do last year? How can you improve your score for next year? What changes need to be made to the scorecard? Because that is something that kind of ideally we would start in the fall right after the notice of funding opportunity is complete. And then we would be readdressing anything and also rolling out technical assistance and training. If I think the example I used with our staff member was, if everybody's having issues with employment, we need to roll out employment trainings, right? Like we need to figure out how can we address this more rapidly and more responsive. And so that would happen kind of right after. As far as mock scores prior to, we do have like a little bit of murky waters there because that's not the same across every agency, if that makes sense.
No, I think that's good. I think I feel like we do talk about this every year that we're like we're going to do all of this review and then we never really quite get it going. Next thing you know, we're like ranking and reviewing. You know? So it's just kind of is there any way to figure out in our strategic plan how we can kind of stop that cycle and do exactly what it is you're saying, Katie? And maybe it's through that position. So
Liz, this is Jackie. I think I'm on the same page with you. I think what we're trying to say is that we have an opportunity to review the NOFO scorecard well in advance of the NOFO coming out, right? So we review the scorecard because it should really go through the committee and then come to the board with recommended changes, correct? You're talking about more of a timing thing, aren't you, Liz?
No, I mean, no, I feel like that does happen, but then for me, and this is just speaking very transparently, we do the review of the scorecard and we do approve it, and then our projects go through it, and it's like I feel like I learned so much more that I hadn't even anticipated when I was reviewing and approving the scorecards. So this is just me, like I said, being very transparent. So if there's any way for us to, I think, it may even be more internal as a provider, this is more the things that you need to do within your own program or your own organization. But I feel like it's also a system thing where we kind of hear this often too. So if there's anything we can do as a board that kind of puts a little bit of a resource in place that maybe once we approve the scorecard, we just even send out a notice to have the projects run their scores and provide the Excel spreadsheet that you all provide that kind of helps us go through what this would look like. Do you see what I'm saying? A little bit more proactive than I think what I've been able to experience thus far.
And I think that is having this person that's going to be dedicated to monitoring so that we'll have that. It's 12 months a year, right? That we're ongoing doing this. It's not just like a crunch when the NOFO comes out. That is that is the ideal situation. We also want to offer more TA as well and offer those opportunities. Like you said, do mock scorecards, offer technical assistance throughout the year. So it's not just something that happens once during the NOFO season. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And really good. Thank you so much. And do we feel like that's covered? I feel like that would live in activity here in strategic planning. Do we feel like that is covered here in what we've said so far?
I feel like that maybe here is where we add a bullet under technical assistance, that it's like beyond identifying the challenges that agencies are facing during rank and review. It's like an in-depth review of the scorecard. Is that because it doesn't really fall under like policies and metrics. It's more under that technical assistance.
Oh, I see. And maybe it's so see how we say year round. I wonder if we like NOFO rank and review is happening no matter what because it's due, right? So I wonder if we did like a 6-month scheduling of something. Do you know, see what I mean? So it takes it like less vague, but instead kind of gets it on our calendar of things to do.
Because there is a date for it to be accomplished. So just by saying year round, we still have a target date that we need to be able to hit in order for it to be executed.
Yeah, I think because we say because we say year around, it's like vague where we're going to be doing this all the time, but then the date never hits. And so all the time never happens.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think under the policies and metrics tab, the review the NOFO scorecard and provide feedback and changes for improvement. That is really the framework of the scorecard. So each year we bring together a work group that looks at the scorecard, says like, does there need to be changes? Is this not achievable for providers? For example, like the race equity questions was readdressed this year, right? We changed, it used to be 2 questions. Now it's 5 questions. The work group came up with suggestions. It went to the committee, then it went to the board. So what I hear you saying, Liz, is maybe under technical assistance, it's review the NOFO scorecard in depth by question to understand the metrics going into the scorecard.
I think that's it. Yeah, because just as an example, I recall approving it when our project went through the race equity one. There was a lot of confusion there. So, and we're actually in it right now. So it's like if that had been done prior, we probably could have been better prepared for scoring, official scoring. Yep. The committees, all of us. Yes.
I'm going to leave this a little vague. And the reason I am is the identifying the challenges is really during the NOFO. And then after this review, the NOFO scorecard would be after the NOFO. I'm going to put in like within 3 months of NOFO turn in. The only reason I'm saying that is typically the NOFO is released in the summer. Last year, it was not released until August. We have no date this year. So typically it's released early July. So we're a little bit like it's hard to say summer or fall because that's not really, it all has to do with when that NOFO date is released. Do people feel comfortable with that?
I think that's perfect. Yep. And that's highly likely why we get in that position because it's a moving target.
Right.
Any other feedback on this one?
I just have a question. I vaguely recall us talking about site visits. Would that be under the monitoring? Has that been removed from the discussion? I did miss a strategic planning meeting, so I just want to make sure.
That was, you all kicked the can to your communication plan and said, we want the communication plan to address this and find out from providers if this is something that is tangible. Happy to add that back in if folks feel like that should be part of monitoring. Our staff do monitor on site to ensure that's part of the monitoring and evaluate CoC funded agencies to ensure compliance to HUD regulations. MAG staff do that right now. But if you all feel like the board should also be a part of that, like definitely want that feedback and happy to incorporate that here. I think over time, you all had some mixed reactions to it and said it was a heavy lift and it wasn't something that board members could commit to, but happy to add it in if board members feel like they can commit to that.
No, thank you for the clarification.
All right, your last one is a communication strategy and plan. So a lot of this has to do with how are we talking about the work that we are doing. You all did form a communication work group that is made up of board members, committee members, and now has been extended to anybody who is interested in being part of that group. They meet on the third Thursday of the month. If you're interested in attending, feel free to reach out to me and I'll get that invite over to you. But there are also a number of other things that are specifically in the communication strategy space. So the homelessness trends report being one of them, the work around Pathways Home, want you all to be aware and included in some of that work as well. But is there anything else on here that you all think need to be added?
This is really exciting. I think this is the most structured we've ever been. And Katie, you've done such a great job of capturing the myriad of information that we threw at you over these past several months. I think this looks really amazing.
Thanks, Jackie.
This is Rob. I would agree. And I think part of the reason why there's not a lot of feedback today is for all the work that you have put into it with the team, capturing insight and conversations over time and really wrapping it together. So I don't have any feedback or changes.
This is Jacqueline. I also agree. I was going to ask about, and it just came up when you mentioned about the advisory board meeting for the youth. Is it possible to include, maybe even on a separate sheet of paper, a list of when the other meetings take place?
Definitely. I love that, Jacqueline.
Great suggestion, Jacqueline.
Thank you.
I want to add, again, really well done, very concise and to the point. I look forward to, I really like the communication plan because I think it's very key. Part of it might be as we put this into play, because it's a plan, there's a lot of dates. We meet, 12 months a year. It would be nice to have a working document because it would seem on any given month's agenda, we should be talking about one or more things from the strategic plan. So here you have it based on different strategies versus if we flip it and have a corresponding cheat sheet by month, if you will, what things we should talk about that are in the plan or communication plan, a crosswalk document maybe.
Thanks, Chris. I think that's kind of our next step once you all approve this is to essentially have a crosswalk for each lead. So essentially like you all as a board, what should you be approving each month or reviewing each month? What should the committee be doing? We already have some of that figured out from your charter, but this is kind of like that next step of what does the data subcommittee need to be reviewing before it comes to you all theoretically the month before, the month of. So we will be producing that document as soon as we get this one finalized. That's it. That is your entire strategic plan. So I clearly did not need to schedule this meeting for an hour and a half. So we'll give you back 45 minutes in your day unless you all have other feedback or things that you want us to include in this. This will come to you all as a plan in your meeting at the end of this month in 2 weeks for you all to officially adopt it and kind of talk through next steps.
Great, thank you.
Great work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Katie.
Katie.
Katie, it's Marchelle. Can you hear me? Katie, can you hear me? It's Marchelle.
Yeah, how are you?
All right. So one, I apologize, everyone. I know people have dropped off. I had to get on late, but I read through it and I'm very supportive and thank you for all the work to the MAG team.
Awesome. Thanks, Marchelle.
All right. You all have a great day. Bye-bye.